was having myself a good little rant about how artists are the immune system for society. How we're basically like
Artists are
the
the
ant.
most important people in society. They protect
Oh yeah,
society
And
from falling
and then
prey
Sitch
to
took
fascism.
a giant dump on it
And then
because he was so
Sitch,
tired
and
of
then
artists.
Sitch got
Yeah.
so seethingly jealous. The jealousy was just
Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen this scam now countless times. Dave Rubin did originally.
Dave Rubin starter kit, really. I mean, look, you can say it goes back to David Horowitz, too, if you want to really
That's right.
delve into history, yeah.
I love how he categorizes every single left-leaning person that gets sick and tired of this woke fucking nonsense. The left has lost their minds and they're throwing up their hands and saying, I'm done, as a scam.
Right. And I mean, and the thing with Dave Rubin is I don't think that he's like a grifter in that he, you know, has some different, to me, when someone says a grifter, I think of a person who has a set of principles or beliefs and then lies to the public about those beliefs in order to gain an audience or to gain money or something.
Yes.
I never perceived Dave Rubin as it. I perceive Dave Rubin as just being a simple individual who simply,
boy,
who picks their team, who picks their tribe, and because one tribe was becoming mean to him, he switched teams. Like,
yeah,
I don't think there's a grift there. I just think I think it's simple human psychology at work.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the people who are nice to me, and why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
I know. So it's interesting because he brings up Dave Horowitz, who I didn't know about anything about this guy. So I looked this guy up, and his story is so insane that if they're considering Dave Horowitz as a grifter, these people have lost all touch with reality.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. This guy, he became a pretty big right-wing pundit in the 80s and 90s. But if you look up his history, this is a guy who his parents were both basically socialist, and he was a dyed-in-the-wool, far left socialist growing up, and all throughout the 60s and 70s. And the thing that changed his mind on this, and he wrote an article that kind of changed him away from being a socialist, was that he was friends with big people in the Black Panthers. Okay. So like Stokely Carmichael, what's the guy's name? Huey, whatever
Long?
the guy's name is. Yeah, Huey Long. He knew all these people in the Black Panther Party, and he was working with them, and he supported the Black Panther Party at the time. And this was in like the 70s or 80s. One of the Black Panther Party people asked him if he could recommend someone to do their bookkeeping for them. And he recommended some random lady who wasn't like politically associated. Like she just, she's an accountant. And what ends up happening is that lady finds out by doing their bookkeeping that they were basically tax dodging and doing all sorts of other illegal behavior. And when she confronted the leader of the Black Party at the time, they basically killed her.
What? Holy shit!
She was found like raped and murdered.
What?
Okay.
What?
Yeah, no, this is a totally insane story.
What?
And so, yeah, no, I know.
Like they
exactly.
didn't just want to get rid of her; they raped her before.
Yes.
What the fuck? Evil incarnate.
Yes, no, it's horrible. It's horrible. And so this is what changed him. The fact that he recommended someone for a job who was then raped and murdered by the people he thought he was working with. Okay. And this woman's murder, even though all signs pointed it to being someone affiliated with the Black Panther Party, it was unsolved and the police didn't really go into it, et cetera, for all these political reasons. And so that horrible event is kind of what opened up the door to him to shift his perspective.
Right.
And now look,
yeah,
you can say, and he went very far in the other direction, on the right.
Dave Rubin is like, people were mean to me on Twitter, but hell, like my secretary wasn't raped and murdered.
Right. And so for them to look at this individual who was a hardcore socialist and then goes through this traumatic experience and feels this overwhelming guilt and then completely goes in the direction, to not look at that and say, oh, that's very obvious human psychology, what happened there, but to say, no, this guy was a grifter. These people are insane. These people are totally insane.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Like, it's so obvious. But they probably don't know this stuff. They're probably just attacking the guy based on
I don't know how they
Wikipedia page or something.
I would assume if you knew who David Horowitz was, or Dave Horowitz, you would know this, because his switch was very public. He wrote an article about it. This is the reason he gave for it happening.
Oh, okay.
Like, it was a big story when it happened. I would imagine if you knew who he was and you knew that he switched teams, you would know why he switched teams. So.
Well, maybe not. I mean, this is all news to me. You're the one telling me about it.
Yeah, but I didn't. Did you know who he was before?
No. First I've heard.
Yeah, basically the way that I think they identify Tim Pool as right wing is electoral outcomes. So, for instance, if he's constantly saying progressives are insane, the left wing's lost their mind, CRT is bullshit, I was a liberal or a progressive, and they've gone so crazy that I can't even deal with them anymore. And as a result, I think that, I'm at least voting Republican. I'm more of a libertarian. I think MAGA is the solution, this, that, the other. Then his electoral outcome, regardless of his philosophical abstract politics, are to get people to either dislike the left wing or to like the right wing more. So that's why they probably identify him as right wing. Same thing with Dave Rubin, where on a principle, if you were to analyze his politics from a philosophical level, he's a liberal, right? He's a liberal. He's probably progressive. I very much doubt he has any problems with LGBTQ folk. He probably believes or I know he had his little ANCAP rant on Joe Rogan's things. Yeah. But ultimately, I'm sure if he talks to if he talks to somebody about progressive taxes for 20 minutes, he'll probably change his mind again. So the point being that he's probably a liberal, and again, like you said, human psychology. He was going with people who weren't treating him like shit. Amazing, right? So kind of getting to this fella, who was a part of the Black Panthers, and then somebody got murdered. I think that a leftist who still wanted to be a douche about this person's change of heart in, conceptualizing other politics is that just because bad shit happens doesn't mean you abandon your principles. So what they would say is that oh, well, you worked with the Black Panthers. The chapter that you worked with was, a criminal organization that committed this rape and murder. But ultimately, the fight for civil rights and all that kind of stuff is a left-wing thing. As a result, you shouldn't flip so hard that you then turn around and attack the thing that you were once for because something bad happened. You just say, oh, these people were, like you said, evil incarnate pieces of shit who were using ostensible high-minded ideals in order to cover up nefarious bullshit. And so I think that would be the stronger criticisms. Whether or not these people actually think that is a different question, because they might not have even just thought this far ahead.
No, I think you're entirely right in that they view this very consequentially based around elections. That's all that matters, who wins the elections. And if you're not helping my team win the elections, then you must be on the other team.
Yeah,
I think it's exactly how they view this.
You bet.
Yeah, and you can see this reflected in the way that they even attack progressives and Democrats, because it's not enough to be a Democrat. You also have to be a progressive, and it's not enough to be a progressive. You also have to be a socialist. Right. And that's where even AOC, AOC and Bernie Sanders, they're probably as left wing as you can be in American electoral politics, and they're still constantly cannibalized by their own base because they're not left wing enough.
Right.
And that's where it becomes religious levels of purity, and unfortunately, a very toxic and hyper cannibalistic part of politics.
Yep, true, very true. John in chat says Horowitz is still pro-choice too. As a major conservative figure, he is pro-choice, not a grift. He is principally anti-communist. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Makes complete sense considering his background. But that's the problem. These people, they look at everything so simplistically.
Yeah. Yes.
Very gross. Very gross.
Well, yeah, you just have to accept every political take. And the thing that bothers me is, I agree with a lot of the goals that they want to achieve. I just disagree that the policy prescriptions that they're putting forward will achieve those goals. And since I disagree with what they just assume, I don't know. Did God like speak in their ear? How do they know this is going to work? But they don't want to have any sort of constructive dialogue on whether or not what they're pitching is even going to be successful. It's like, we know, shut up. It's like, how about you fuck off?
Anyways, thank you all for coming on this journey with us through watching the Young Turks' incredible idiotic projection and hypocrisy. Thank you, Connor Counterpoints, for joining us. This sounds awful. What's happening? That's depressing. Sounds like we're dying.